Hello, I'm Toang. You're watching Into Vietnam Weekend. In this bulletin, we'll offer you a comprehensive view about Vietnam's economy throughout the week, ending April the 22nd. Coming up are major stories in the week. Vietnam runs a trade surplus of $220 million in the first quarter. FPT will be the official distributor of April Incorporated in Vietnam. And I will talk with Gaurav Gupta, Managing Director of JJW Vietnam, about auto market in 2012. First, we'll look at figures of the week.
Data from the General Department of Vietnam Customs reported that Vietnam ran a trade surplus of $220 million in the first quarter of 2012, the first time that the Southeast Asian country posted a trade surplus for the quarter in recent 3 years. Total export of the country in the past 3 months amounted to roughly $24.8 billion, up 24% on the year. Of the total, FDI sector accounted for nearly $14 billion, representing a year-on-year increase of 44%. In March alone, total export of the local economy reached $9.5 billion, up 1% on the month. Meanwhile, the country imported $24.6 billion worth of goods and services, of which around $13 billion was from FDI sector, up 24% on the year. During the first quarter, FDI sector played a critical part of turning Vietnam's trade balance to surplus. However, export and import in this sector in March posted the growth, which were even lower than the country's average level.
The Minister of Planning and Investment Bùi Quang Vinh said Vietnam's CPI in April would slow down to 0.1%, lower than March CPI of 0.16%. With this estimation, April CPI increase will record the lowest on-month rise in recent 21 months. CPI of the Southeast Asian country has gradually slowed down in the first quarter of the year. Tight money and credit measures, enhanced management of the stated budget spending and public investment, and low food prices are considered main reasons for April's low CPI increase. The State Bank of Vietnam spent 130 trillion dong purchasing $6.23 billion in the first quarter of 2012. The move was aimed to raise the country's forex reserve and to ease the lending interest rates in the domestic market. During the first quarter, the central bank pumped 190 trillion dong into the local banking system. Of the total, the monetary authority spent 130 trillion dong to buy foreign currency for reserve, 30 trillion dong to support banks' liquidity, and another 30 trillion dong to provide refinancing loans to aid weak credit institutions.
Statistics from the General Department of Vietnam Customs show that Vietnam ran a trade surplus of roughly $2 billion with the U.S. in the first 2 months of this year. The Southeast Asia country exported a total of over $2.5 billion worth of goods to America, while it spent $720 million to import goods from the country. In February alone, Vietnam earned over $1.3 billion of export revenue from the U.S., while it is imported $400 million worth of commodities. Apparel, wood products, seafood, and footwear were the main export staples of Vietnam to U.S., while machinery, equipment, animal feed were the main imports during the period.
Coming up is a summary about the local securities markets throughout the week. VN Index increased by 3.2 points to close the week at 465.72. VN 30 Index gained 1.44 points to end at 533.74. HNX Index lead by 0.63 points to 77.75. For the whole week, a total of 602.6 million units were traded on the primary bourse for 9.93 trillion dong. At the same time, 493 million units were changed hands on the northern bourse for 5.4 trillion dong. Regarding foreign investors, these players net sold 691.7 billion dong worth of shares on Ho Chi Minh Stock Exchange. Specifically, they bought 30.48 million units, totaling 775.6 billion dong, while selling 57.45 million units for 1.47 trillion dong. At the same time, foreign investors net bought 21.2 billion dong worth of shares on Hanoi Stock Exchange. In details, they bought 60 million units, totaling 75.6 billion dong, and sold 3.67 million units for 54.4 billion dong. Next, let's review major macroeconomics and investment events during the past week. Vietinbank has been announced to be in the world's top 2,000 largest enterprises in Global 2000 by the American-based publishing and media company Forbes. Vietinbank is the only Vietnamese enterprise to be in the list with the 1,989th ranking. Forbes statistics showed that Vietinbank's turnover is $2.8 billion, profit $0.2 billion, asset value $21.9 billion, and the market value $2.4 billion. In terms of profit, Vietinbank is in the 1,945th place and takes the 904th place in terms of asset value over the 2,000 ranked enterprises.
The State Bank of Vietnam has recently issued a circular that stipulates cases to restrict credit growth by credit institution. Under the circular, credit institutions and branches of foreign banks will be restricted to expand credits if their debt account for at least 10% of total loans for 3 consecutive months. Besides, this restriction is applied with those having capital adequacy ratios of credit institution below 8% for 6 consecutive months and above. Credit growth is also limited with those violating credit lines to one customer or one group of customers over 2 times in the future years or breaching lending limits and conditions for stocks trading and investment. The new regulation will come into effect on May 30.
The Ministry of Finance and the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, or ACCA, of the UK have recently agreed on the joint examination scheme for training current Vietnam's auditor human resource. The ACCA will support the finance ministries in providing high-quality services, training members, and updating international standards of accounting and audit. The ACCA also committed to fully funding scholarships for ministry staffs to attend ACCA courses. ACCA is a global body for professional accountants, which qualification is widely recognized by several nations.
In its newly completed economy restructure plan, the Ministry of Planning and Investment has proposed 7 prioritized sectors in the medium and long terms in Vietnam's economy restructure. The 7 proposed priority sectors include metallurgical, petrochemical, shipbuilding, transportation, electronics, green industry, renewable energy, freight forward services, and tourism. There will be 2 groups of sectors to be given priorities during the country economy restructure. They are group of current competitive sectors and group of buildable competitive sector. These 2 groups are expected to increase advantages for Vietnam in 2016 to 2020 period and future. Besides, ports and telecommunication technology infrastructure sectors also continue to be modernized. For current competitive sector, the ministry suggests to continue giving priority following criteria of efficiency, high added value proportion, spread, creating many jobs, high proportion in GDP and export.
The Prime Minister on Tuesday issued a decision to establish the Móng Cái Border Economic Zone in the northern province of Quảng Ninh. The zone covers around 121,200 hectares of land and water surface, bordering China in the north and the East Sea in the east. This border economic zone will be a tariff-free area and include a border gate, industrial zones, a financial center, residential areas, an administrative center, and other functional areas. The Prime Minister has approved the master plan for Thanh Thủy Border Gate Economic Zone in the northern mountainous province of Hà Giang by 2030. The zone covers over 28,780 hectares, having a 26-kilometer-long border with China. It is a combination of such sectors as trade, service, industry, and agroforestry. It will act as an international trade gateway and a bridge linking the North Vietnam and China, as well as ASEAN countries and Northeast Asia.
Vietnam lawmakers are working out on a plan to establish a cooperative bank as another funding channel for collective economic model.
As soon as the law on cooperatives is approved by the government, a specific operational organization for the cooperative bank will be developed. The cooperative bank will be formed on the basis of voluntary capital contribution by its members. The bank will primarily raise funds from and lend it to members only. Net profit of the bank will be divided among members.
Statistics from the Ministry of Planning and Investment have shown that Japan is currently the biggest investor in Vietnam.
There have been 95 countries and territories investing in the country to date, with 13,588 valid projects capitalized at over $200 billion. Of this amount, investments from Japan occupied more than $26 billion worth of 1,596 valid projects. Most of these projects are small-scale and focused on the fields of processing, manufacturing, information, and construction. Japanese investors are now present in 44 localities of Vietnam, but mostly where infrastructure is developed, such as Ho Chi Minh City, Hà Nội, Hải Phòng, and Hải Dương.
And some foreign trade news will continue our program.
The Ministry of Industry and Trade said petroleum import in the first quarter of this year plunged by 42% on the year to over 1.6 million tons. Specifically, imports of several petrol products fell significantly, like diesel and FO nearly 50%, gasoline 26%, fuels for planes 23% on the year. The ministry attributed the low petrol import to the domestic stagnation at the moment. Vietnam is expected to import a total of over 2 million tons of petrol by the end of April.
Vietnam's key rice importers include China, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Malaysia. In particular, China is emerging as a major market for this type of food, as the volume of rice export contracts to this neighbor has been rising in recent times. In the first quarter, Vietnam exported more than 1 million tons of rice, down over 40% in both volume and value from the same period last year. However, exports of this commodity are getting back on track as the number of export contracts is picking up. The Vietnam Food Association said some 89 member enterprises have bought more than 700,000 tons as part of a plan to stockpile 1 million tons of rice in this winter-spring crop to prop up prices.
The Vietnam Association of Seafood Exporters and Producers said trout fish export to the U.S. in the first quarter of the year surged by 40%. Trout fish export to the U.S. market accounted for 18% of total Vietnamese trout fish export, then followed by Brazil with impressive increase of 150%. Other consumption markets of Vietnamese trout fish also recorded good growth in the past quarter. During the period, The Southeast Asia country shipped 160,000 tons of trout fish, totaling $422 million, up 5% in volume and 12% in value on the year.
Since 2008, Vietnam began celebrating Vietnam Brand Day to promote the domestic good brands. Vietnamese brands are increasingly well recognized by local markets as well as global markets. This indicates that the local enterprises have succeeded in building their own brand names. Several parties from the government, the business community, and local consumers are paying more attention to Vietnamese brands. But it is said that to promote and maintain the Vietnamese brands in consumers' mind is a long, hard journey.
Recent research on consumption demand of Nielsen showed that up to 19% of surveyed people in Ho Chi Minh City and 83% in Hanoi said they will definitely consume more Vietnamese products. Although 2011 was said to be a hard year for many businesses when consumers tightened their pockets, but the garment and textile sector still posted stable growth rate of 12%. This implies the fact that domestic products build up a good foothold in consumers' mind.
Trước đây thì mình cứ nghĩ rằng là các cái thương hiệu quốc tế, thương hiệu nước ngoài thì nổi tiếng cho nên là về cái chất lượng sản phẩm sẽ tốt hơn. Nhưng tuy nhiên bây giờ mình nghĩ rằng là một số những các cái thương hiệu Việt ấy cũng có cái tính cạnh tranh rất là cao trên thị trường. Đấy, như mình nói là vừa về giá cả rồi là về cái chất lượng rồi về mọi thứ. Thì mình nghĩ rằng là bây giờ thì mình chuyển sang cái hướng là sử dụng hàng Việt nhiều hơn.
Và hàng Việt mình thì so với những năm gần đây thì nói chung là sức bán ra và cũng sức mua của người Việt mình cũng nhiều hơn so với những năm trước. Cái hàng Việt mình bây giờ thì nói chung là cái giá cả của nó thì cũng vừa mới túi tiền người mua. Hai là mẫu mã của nó họ bây giờ làm cũng cải tiến nhiều hơn, cũng đẹp.
Survey by Nielsen also revealed that there are many reasons include local people to come back to consume domestic products. Reasonable price, diversified product life, good promotion and warranty, and especially better for health are the advantages of Vietnamese products.
Mình thấy thì hàng Việt Nam ấy thì về màu sắc ấy thì cũng khá là đa dạng và phong phú, giá cả thì mình thấy rằng là cũng hợp lý, cũng không quá là đắt.
Tôi thấy cái thương hiệu Việt những năm gần đây là khá phát triển. Thế có sự thay đổi khá đột biến so với những năm trước. Tức là nó tiếp cận được với nhiều những cái sự phát triển khác trên thế giới.
To successfully build up good brand names, local businesses have to improve the product's quality and design to persuade domestic consumers. Perception about Vietnamese brand product is now improved in consumers' mind. Many of them can compete successfully with foreign brand products and may with government company.
Bởi từ trước đến nay thì cái xu hướng tiêu dùng của người Việt Nam chúng ta đều cứ nghĩ là cứ phải sản phẩm ngoại nhập mới là sản phẩm có chất lượng cao và có thương hiệu. Nhưng thực tế những năm gần đây thì tâm lý đó đã dần được thay đổi. Cái thay đổi thứ nhất là rất nhiều doanh nghiệp Việt Nam đã có thể sản xuất được những cái thương hiệu mang tên Việt Nam nhưng chất lượng rất tốt và có thể cạnh tranh trực tiếp với các sản phẩm cùng loại ở nước ngoài.
However, not all enterprises can also succeed in positioning products in local consumers' mind. It's a long process, and to maintain it to develop sustainably is more difficult.
Xây dựng thương hiệu thì chúng tôi cũng phải luôn ý thức được cái việc nhất quán trong việc xây dựng một cái thương hiệu mạnh với những cái dòng sản phẩm mang tên May 10. Cái thứ hai là chúng tôi luôn tập trung vào cái việc đầu tư những cái công nghệ để làm thế nào có thể đưa ra được những cái sản phẩm mà nó hợp thời trang và hợp mẫu mã và lại đảm bảo được cái chất lượng cũng như là sánh ngang với cái đẳng cấp của các cái thương hiệu nước ngoài. Và cái nữa là hiện tại thì có rất nhiều các cái doanh nghiệp cùng ngành cũng ngay cả trong Việt Nam lẫn quốc tế họ đều muốn thâm nhập vào cái thị trường thời trang của Việt Nam, đặc biệt là những cái thị trường bán lẻ, và chính vì vậy cũng là áp lực rất lớn.
Besides, The representative of May Mười Government Company also stressed that to develop Vietnamese brand products, it's necessary to understand the intrinsic values of a company. Supports from government, local authorities, and associations are also needed. Several promotion programs like Vietnamese people use Vietnamese products or national brands program will help promote the trend of using Vietnamese products more widely. Also, to help local enterprises develop their brand, more supports of budget from the government in promotion program like national brands program will be helpful for local enterprises to develop and protect Vietnamese branded products.
In the setting of tough economic conditions, Vietnam's automobile market has long been suffering a downturn. In the final part of the program, we will bring you an evaluation of a big player in Vietnam named GM on the local auto market this year via the interview with Gaurav Gupta, Managing Director of GM Vietnam.
Well, hello, and first of all, thank you very much for joining us today. And the demand for cars in Vietnam has been increasing in recent years. However, since late 2011, the market seems stagnated, and the sales volume has often seen month-on-month decrease. So what do you think is the reason?
Firstly, thank you for having me on the show. And the question that you are asking is very relevant to the entire automotive industry in Vietnam. In our opinion, the reason why the month-to-month decline which prevailed in 2011 are multiple. Firstly, there has been tightening of the credit supply in the system, which means consumers do not get ready active loans to buy cars, and that affects the demand of the industry. Second, there has been a very high level of inflation in 2011, which also increased the cost of living for people, and therefore the impact on disposable income was there, and they did not come and buy cars. Thirdly, the Vietnamese dong was very, very volatile versus the US dollar, and as a result of that, a lot of imports into the country went through ups and downs, and that impacted demand. The fourth reason that we see is there was supply constraint from markets like Thailand and Japan into Vietnam, because there is a lot of supply coming into the country from these markets because of the natural disasters, and that affected the entire industry as well. Lastly, the government did come down on private importers. So it was good for the industry for sure, but for the short term, it did and has impacted the overall industry size. So to us, these are the top 5 reasons why the entire industry in 2011 has actually been going down on a month-to-month basis.
The economic outlook is forecast to be somehow better in 2012, which will have good impacts on the spending attitude of customers. However, there are now many obstacles facing the local auto market, like higher registration fee and road maintenance fee, considering both the positive and negative aspects of the market. So what is your forecast for the market in the near future?
To give you some exact numbers, the industry in 2011 was around 140,000 units in Vietnam. And when you look at 2012, there is a mixed air of optimism. There is a concern in the short term, in the first half of the year, that the industry actually will contract. And then hopefully in the second half of the year, the industry should actually bounce back. That's what we all hope to believe. To give you again some numbers, in the first quarter of 2012, the industry in Vietnam has actually come down by almost 40 to 44% versus last year. Now, any industry which falls down by that kind of numbers in the first quarter, you really will not be expecting very huge growth in the whole year, despite whatever happens in second half of the year. So in our estimate, we believe that the entire year would actually be looking down versus 2011, and we should be expecting the industry to be around 15 to 20% lower than 2011. Having said so, there is optimism, like I said, and which is mixed. There has been reduction in inflation this year. There's been reduction in interest rates this year. But at the same time, there have been taxation possible taxes which have been looking at getting introduced in the marketplace. Now, some of those taxes or fees are not just one time at the time of acquisition. Some of those proposals would actually be more on a recurring basis. And where the consumers get concerned is, if it's at a one-time purchase, they can still sometimes manage to allocate resources, gather resources, and buy what they want to buy. But when it becomes an annual recurring fee for themselves, then it becomes a cost of ownership issue on an ongoing basis. So people are a bit hesitant right now. What will be the annual recurring cost to them for the vehicle? Because cars also come with maintenance cost, gasoline cost, etc. And then you have fees and levies as well. So there is optimism because of lower interest rates, lower inflation. But the concern is with taxes, and that is why, because of the first half of the year looking so question mark in a state of affairs, we believe that the overall industry will not grow over last year's numbers and should come somewhere between minus 15 to 20% of 2011 numbers.
And the demand is quite low at the moment. The economic condition has not yet been really improved. The automobile import duties have also been reduced. So if there's a possibility that the price will go down to boost the purchasing power.
You see, reduction of prices is a lot to do with the structural costs of companies and players in the marketplace. There may be one or two players who might do a knee-jerk reaction and try and play the price game, but it will not be sustainable. In times like right now, consumers are very, very careful about what they are spending on, because in the past and even in the recent past, the cost of funds has been very expensive, very, very high. So the consumers are looking at what is the best value that I get from my spending. Do I get the best return on my spending? And that is the right approach right now, because you have to be very careful of the risk you are taking by borrowing money and then spending money, whether it's on products for personal use or official use. To that extent, I think the customer will be very demanding on the right value of the products. And what you will see, however, is a lot of players in the industry increasing the value proposition for their brands.
In the Vietnamese automobile market at the moment, there are many manufacturers, many brands, and in the current context of tough economic condition, many of them are trying to boost the purchasing power by offering many promotion programs. So what do you think about the competition in the market at the moment?
Well, we always believe more competition is better for the customer. It helps even the players, look at themselves internally and become more efficient and become more customer focused. So we welcome competition in every market, in every segment. Having said so, in the current situation where the market has actually fallen down by almost 40 to 44% in Q1, which was unanticipated by most players, there is of course pressure of inventory for sure in the segment, in the industry. And then of course there is the cost of funds, which is expensive for the customers. So you do have players, like I said earlier, they are becoming very aggressive in offering value proposition to customers to try and conquest the customer and try and increase their share in this marketplace. So you will see for a short term a lot of players announcing their promotion plans, a lot of dealers, a lot of brands going out and wooing the customers, which is good for the customers eventually. And we hope that all this will soon pass on and we become into more stabilized market form soon.
Thank you very much for your time with us today, and we wish you have a good business in Vietnam.
That's all for our weekend bulletin. Thanks for joining us. For comments and feedbacks, please send us an email at intovietnam@vitv.vn or call us at 0422208288 or 0983 566 844. Goodbye and see you next time.